Can you imagine spending 8 hours straight in the kitchen, turning raw ingredients into an epic feast for your entire family? Well, I did exactly that. And today I want you to join me on a culinary marathon where I tackle everything from scratch for our extended family. The highs and the lows and the delicious payoff. This isn't just cooking, it's an adventure. It has been some time since we invited up my husband's mother and her sister for a big family dinner, and tonight we decided to do just that. So instead of just cooking a couple things and giving a few options, we decided to go all out on a big old feast and bring you along for the ride. I'm going to show you some things that will absolutely change the way I cook moving forward for the better, and some tips on how I could have made things a little tastier in the end. And I can tell you, my kids were so excited about this. They were all in for helping. So this one is going to be fun. Now, my first order of business when we got started in the morning was baking a loaf of sourdough bread. I will admit it has been some time since I've made a sourdough loaf. So this one took me back a little bit to go ahead and get back in the hang of all the things sourdough. While I typically do keep a starter active, I usually use it for more discard recipes and other things around the kitchen. So today I am making a same day sourdough loaf. And let me tell you, I'm going to share a lot of recipes, and I will make sure to put links down in the description so you can find everything that you're looking for, along with any gear or gadgets that I'm using that made things a little bit easier. But what I'm going to say is this same day sourdough loaf turned out way better than expected, especially considering the twists and turns that it took along the way. Ingredients are just flour, starter, salt, and water. Super simple to come together. And I'm going to do stretch and folds on that about every 20 minutes for about an hour and a half. The second item on my agenda also deals with sourdough, and it is a delicious, absolutely amazing sourdough chocolate cake. Now, this is one that actually was given to me in the directions and planning for this entire day to start the night before, but we had just got home. I was super tired and decided to put it all off until today. Now, you might be wondering, well, what I'm talking about as far as the planning goes. I decided to give this specific challenge to ChatGPT, my old right hand in the kitchen, and have it plan not only the recipes, but also the entire meal, as well as put it together with a start to finish checklist of what I needed to do at what specific times of the day. The only thing I did the night before, which it told me to do, was to feed the sourdough starter. The rest of it, I all started on this specific morning when I was up and running around in the kitchen. While I am not typically a huge fan of AI, to have it put together not only our menu, but also the grocery list in order of the sections that I would need to shop in the grocery store, it is a huge time savings. Definitely do recommend, especially if you're looking to pull off something large like this in a day. It takes your planning time down to next to nothing, which I greatly appreciate. Now, as for the cake recipe, you can go ahead and start the initial part the night before, which really helps to ferment the flour and break it down, which is much easier on stomachs that might be a little bit more sensitive to gluten. Since I have already admitted to no advanced planning, I just set my ingredients to the side while I went ahead and mixed up the dry ingredients and later just incorporated all together. I think I did let it set around 20 to 30 minutes because I had a couple extra things to do in between. But the longer you let that set, the easier it's going to be to digest. And I know it's possible that some of you are sitting out there thinking, why in the world would I want sourdough in my chocolate cake? I am here to tell you, if you have not tried it, you absolutely must give it a try. Even if you just have a discard sitting around that's not even active, the flavor that it imparts into the cake is absolutely delicious. This specific recipe called for 2 rounds to make it like a beautiful cake on a stand, but I had no time or patience for that today. So I'm going ahead and throwing it into a 9x13, and I'm just gonna bake it until a toothpick comes out clean in the center, which is around 45 to 50 minutes, just depending on your oven. It will bake at 350 degrees. Now, days like this are all about what you can get done in the in-between times. So while the cake is baking, I'm going ahead and getting the chicken stock boiling over on the stove for the pearled barley, which is going to come later. Now, this isn't an ingredient that I typically have on hand, so I did grab this at a local natural food store in the bulk section. So it was actually really inexpensive. Sometimes I do make similar recipes with a farro grain, which is a little bit more costly, but this one specifically suggested the barley, and I was excited to give it a try. One thing I will say is that 2 cups of barley, which is what it requested, is a ton of barley. To cook it up, the recipe actually called for 3 cups of stock to 1 cup of the dried grain. So unlike rice, it takes a lot more water to make this happen. So keep in mind, you probably only need 1 cup for your average family at home. Now, anytime I'm in the kitchen with a lot going on and family all around, the messes are insane. And I know I'm not alone on that. So today I wanted to show you exactly how I've been cleaning up around here for the past couple weeks and introduce you to the sponsor of today's video, which happens to be Mop Robo, which was perfect to give a shout out to today when my son just came walking through with his muddy, disgusting shoes. You can see this mop makes quick work of it. While traditionally I'd have to get out the mop and the bucket and everything that goes along with it, when using Mop Robo, it's everything all in one. So no more sweeping and then mopping. You can take this beauty and plow right over those absolutely repulsive messes and wait for Mop Robo to do all of the hard work. And when I say all of the hard work, I really mean it. Not only did it tackle the mud, but yesterday it also tackled a huge powdered sugar mess, which I actually did get out the camera and try to record, but somehow the footage did not stay with me, unfortunately. Why Mop Robo over other options out there? Well, it has a waterproof motor with no pipe design, so there is no risk of clogging your motor. You also do not need to vacuum beforehand, as the dirt goes straight into the dirty water tank. It can also run up to 80 minutes per charge. It's self-cleaning, meaning you're not spreading around muddy water all over your beautiful floors. And there's also no bad smell or odor, which helps protect your family's respiratory health. Now, if you're like me, the big question on all of these things is always maintenance. So all the mess is collected into a separate wet and dry tank. You can take the pad off and throw it in the washer, and you can also just simply dump out all the hard solids that it picks up. You will see here, I have quite the collection here. Everything from potato chips to apple slices, the Mop Robo picks up with no problem at all. When they say you don't have to mop first, they mean it. After a quick dump of all of the liquid and then the solids to the trash, all you have to do is rinse it out to have a very clean and sanitary mop to put back on the charger so it can do the drying of the pad and the full cleaning of the green portion all on its own over on the charger. The other thing that I really appreciate about my Mop Robo is that it came with a year's supply of the cleaning solution that goes right in that water tank on the back of the machine. All it takes is 1 capful of this sea salt and citrus cleaner, which really doesn't leave any smell at all in your kitchen, which for me is very important because my goal is to be as low/no scent as possible. If you're in the market for the easiest mop you will ever use, make sure to check the link in the description and grab yours today.
Charging started. Press the trigger to start self-cleaning. Starting drying.
It really is that simple and a huge help on super busy kitchen days like this. Now that we have the floor clean, it's time to move on to the next part of the process, which is prepping all of the vegetables, which were on the schedule for my 2 to 4 p.m. hours in the afternoon. I'm going to start out with a whole bunch of potatoes. I'm making 3 different forms of potatoes for this meal. I know it's a little intense, but like I said, we usually don't do anything this fancy very often. And my goal with this was to have a variety of leftovers that would feed my family for the next few nights. So not only could we have all of the varieties and delicious meals that we love on this specific day, but I could also take the next few days away from the kitchen as we jump back into our homeschool routine full swing around the house. I will say though that managing the timers is a big thing when you have so many different dishes going at the same time. So while I'm over here checking on the cake to make sure it is done, I'm also going to stir up the barley now that the water is boiling on it as well. But I have to talk to you about the potatoes. I have to tell you what I did on this specific day will change the way I make potatoes for large family meals forever moving forward. Now, in the past, I have done something similar, but not quite the same way. So I want to give you a little caveat to hopefully help you save a ton of time in the kitchen when you don't have much time to spare. These mashed potatoes are headed for the Instapot. Now, this Instapot specifically has a delay on it. So I'm putting these potatoes in hours before they need to be cooked. They only need high pressure for 8 total minutes. But if you put them in the pot and cover them with water and add the salt that's necessary, go ahead and set your timer for 8 minutes and then hit the delay start. You can time it for whatever time of day you need. So let's say that you are a working mom and you're not at home all day, but you want mashed potatoes to go with your dinner for the evening. If you throw potatoes, water, and salt in before you head off to work, when you come home, the potatoes are going to be all done, and all you have to do is drain them and stir them up. It's really, really a game changer. Or what if you have a huge amount of people coming over and you want to go ahead and put the potatoes on the night before because you don't want to think about it the next morning when you wake up? Again, huge, huge benefit. I have always been a fan of Instapots, but now that I have the actual Instapot that has the delayed start, I feel like I am totally free to make a few new changes that I wouldn't have considered before realizing delayed start was a thing. Now, I have shown you a ton of food that I am prepping for this meal, but I haven't went into exactly what's on the menu. So while I'm filling up that Instapot for the potatoes, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what's for dinner. We are having an oven roasted spatchcock chicken with roasted vegetables, which will be cabbage, carrots, potatoes, and onions. We're also going to have a pot roast with carrots and onions and potatoes. And then we're going to have several different sides, everything from a cabbage and apple slaw to the delicious mushroom and onion barley that's over on the stove right now. But not only are we eating inside, the chickens are getting a healthy dose outside too. So all those scraps are on their way out, courtesy of my little assistants, which you'll see more of here shortly. And while I'm grabbing out my favorite piece of cast iron, which happens to be a very old fryer with a super, super smooth bottom, if you know, you know, right? The new stuff is just not the same. I'm going to take just a minute to introduce myself for those of you who might be new to my channel. My name is Jill. I'm a homeschooling mom of 5 kids, which are currently ages 12 to 3, but we're getting ready to be 12 to 4. We have a full house where we moved back to our hometown to raise our kids. So my husband and I grew up right here, and we're doing the same for our kiddos. This channel focuses on all things grocery and budget, as well as scratch-made foods. So if that's something that you're interested in, make sure to subscribe because I think you will love what we have to share. Now that I have the roast seared off, I did go ahead and add some beef broth to it that we made a few weeks ago on my other channel, which is the Hometown Homestead. Then we're also adding some of the vegetables that we made, as well as some salt and pepper, some Worcestershire sauce. And then I'm throwing in some garlic and onion powders as well, just for some extra flavor. Now, this roast is not fully thawed. I did have it in the refrigerator the night before, so it's basically thawed enough to make sure that I could give it a good sear, and then the rest of it will take place in the Instapot. Now, if you are wondering, yes, I have 2. I actually have 4. I'm just going to throw it out there. I collect Instapots at garage sales, at Goodwill, and anywhere I can find them, particularly Facebook Marketplace, can't be overlooked, at a good deal. So I grab them when I find them. They are super useful. Sometimes I have 2 to 3 and even 4 going at the same time. So if you see one and you're out, make sure to give it a go. Now, this is going to be a cabbage and apple slaw. I had never made this before, but my kids absolutely love cabbage, and apples are an all-time favorite snack around here. So this seems like a natural fit. But when my son was looking at the recipe, he decided we need to do 3 apples instead of 2 because the last apples that I picked up at the store were rather small. I am going to go ahead and fully admit that we have all decided next time that 2 apples are actually plenty. But this is a very simple slaw, and it has a very clean and crisp flavor. It has a ton of apple flavor to it. Perhaps the extra apple was the culprit there, but I will tell you that even though you have way more cabbage in there than apple, the apple taste is just really delicious, really fresh, and something I would highly recommend for the summer season. You can definitely chop all of this up by hand, but if you have a food processor, it will make so quick time of this process that is my first recommendation. Now, the dressing itself is really simple. It's apple cider vinegar plus some olive oil, a little honey, and some mustard to try to give it a little bit of balance. My husband isn't particularly a fan of things that are super sweet. The kids and I differ on that. So the mustard is a nice addition to just try to help balance that out a little bit. But overall, this was a very delightful, fresh slaw and something super easy to put in the refrigerator early in the morning or even the day before and pull out when it's dinner time. You just want to make sure to get it covered and in the fridge so it can chill nicely before it heads out on the table. After my first assistant gave it a good toss, that's exactly where it went before we moved on to next steps of this way long, busy kitchen day, which happened to be chopping up the onions and the mushrooms for the barley. Now, just as a quick personal side, you saw my older son helping out throughout this day, and you'll see much more of him as time goes on. But it wouldn't be a busy, planned out, very scheduled day as a mom without something going wrong. So this morning, my husband took my kiddos out to a favorite park that we have locally, and my second son fell and hurt himself pretty badly. He's kind of cut up and he's lounging over in the room to the side. So I'm checking on him from time to time just to make sure he's doing okay, doctoring some wounds and moving forward. But it is just so typical of a day in my life to where I have everything scheduled to the minute and something like that goes wrong. Thankfully, my husband was home on this specific day, took an extra vacation day, so it was a huge help to be able to know somebody was in there hanging out with my guy, making sure everything was okay. Now, mushrooms and onions. This is one of the places where I went wrong. The mushrooms and onions themselves chop perfectly, look great, but the recipe said to add them to the risotto. Now, anybody who's ever cooked something like this or knows any of the ingredients going in knows clearly what I should have done was take the risotto out of the pan, cook down the mushrooms and onions to get the flavors developed, then added the barley back to the pan. But I did not do that. My thought was, I only want to get one pan dirty. This is going in the oven. Surely it'll bake off. It'll be great, blah, blah, blah. That's a mistake. You need two pans. You need to put some butter in the bottom of the pan, saute off your onions and your mushrooms. While the flavor of this dish turned out absolutely delicious, I would have loved it more with some more developed flavors in those onions and the mushrooms. Now, in the meantime, my son and my little lady decided to go ahead and take on the adventure of making the icing for the cake by themselves. And I couldn't help but jump in here with the camera to show you exactly what's going on. They are quite the pair, as you will see. She is animated to another level and a real piece of work. I love her so much and her willingness to help and his willingness to put up with her shenanigans. So greatly appreciate those little kiddos helping out, and they did a great job putting together the icing. Now, as you can see, I finished up. I added a splash of cream here, and I'm throwing it in a baking dish. It's going to go in the oven for 350 for about 20 minutes to go ahead and get nice and crispy on top. I love to leave it kind of really rough texture on top because I want those edges to get really crispy and beautiful. So highly recommend that dish for sure, as long as you do it not the way I showed you, but the way I told you. Now, after those stretch and folds were complete on the dough, I did go ahead and put it in my proofer to help it double in size faster than it normally would out on the counter. On days like this, when you're moving rather fast and you're looking for a same-day sourdough, being able to control the temperature that your dough is proofing at is really, really important to make sure that it's going to rise in time. So I'm just going to go ahead and fold this up. I'm folding all of the edges in and creating a nice tension on the dough itself, getting a nice roll, and then I'm just going to flip it over seam side down and start to create some of that tension as I roll it on my counter. Once I get a nice dough ball here, I'm going to go ahead and throw it into a tea towel that has been floured. Now, I wish I could say it's been floured enough, but it's part of the problem, but nothing ever all goes right on a busy day in the kitchen, right? So you'll see me salvage this in a bit, but as soon as you get it all rolled up, just go ahead and put it face down in a floured tea towel if you don't have a Banneton basket, and then you're good to go. You can use a large bowl for this. I'm actually using just I think it's a 4-quart measuring cup size, and I'm putting it back in that proofer so it can sit there for another hour while the cake goes back into action with the kids getting it iced. Now, he was using a Ziploc bag trying to squirt it on like you would cupcakes because he started on that without my help. We did move past that, just go to a regular knife and get that icing on and throw it in the fridge before moving on to next steps. Now, believe it or not, I actually had a little bit of downtime to go take a break and hang out and check on everybody and have a little bit of lunch for myself. And then it was time to go ahead and move back toward the dough while he worked on the tea, which was his specialty for the evening. Now, as you can see, my dough was totally stuck to the towel on the top. It was not stuck on the bottom, But if you know anything about dough, you know that totally messed up the entire tension and shape of my loaf. So I just went ahead and folded it back together, created the tension again, and hoped for the best, which did end up salvaging a pretty beautiful loaf, which I'll show you here at the end. But once I got it all pinched together, I flipped it over and went ahead and scored it. Now, I don't have a fancy bread lane. As you can see, my bread making is actually pretty rustic. That's a generous way to put it, because it's not something that I make quite often. I usually make a sandwich loaf, which is just easier to slice and easier for my kids to eat. But we decided to go with the fancy bread for this evening. So I'm just going with a regular razor blade like you get at the hardware store to slice the top of my loaf and give it a nice opening so it can really score and swell like a regular bread loaf should and expand during the baking process. Now, there are so many ways to score bread, and I am by far no means an expert, will never plan to be, but I just grab a razor blade from the hardware store and give it a few slices so it can make a really nice expansion once it's in the oven. You see that deep slit through the top? That is really important because that's what gives it the nice big spring. So my Dutch oven had been preheating in the oven at 450 for over an hour to make sure it was nice and hot. And then I'm just putting it in the parchment down inside and grabbing a couple ice cubes to slip down beneath the parchment and the pan before putting the lid on, putting it back in the oven to bake for around 45 to 50 minutes until the internal temperature comes out to at least 190 degrees. And now it's time to get back to the chicken dish, which is one of our favorites around here, but I knew that as a result, it would not be enough to just serve this chicken with the family members that we had coming up because my kids can tackle a chicken like this by themselves. Now, instead of roasting this bird whole, which would take a little extra time, I decided to go ahead and spatchcock it because it helps to get all of the skin nice and crispy, plus saves about 30 to 40 minutes on your overall cook time because you don't have to worry about the rib cage in the middle of the cooking process. So all you need to do is slice down the backbone and pull that rib cage out. Slowly working your knife down both sides, you'll be able to find joints in the legs and in the shoulders to where you can easily just get them detached from the overall rib cage. Now, while that was going in the oven, you can see my beautiful bread here. It came out way better than I expected. It isn't quite as golden brown as I wanted, but the loaf itself is above temperature, so I didn't want to bake it any longer. I set it on the cooling rack over there to cool off. You'll see later I didn't get it completely cool before I cut it, but I did make it manageable and easy enough for us to touch that we were ready to go. Now, once I had the rib cage out of the chicken, I went ahead and flipped it over, got it really dry, which is the absolute most important part of getting delicious, crunchy chicken skin. And then I put some avocado oil on top. You can use olive or whatever you have, but I like avocado because it has a higher smoke point and also just no real flavor, just kind of bland. So that makes a really nice addition to something like this. To the top, I added salt, pepper, and some Italian seasoning. And I'm using my large, I think this is a 15-inch cast iron. I'll check. I'll make sure to link it down below, but this is a huge cast iron skillet. It will take this full chicken face down with no problem. It has the perfect amount of space, and this is what I go to when I want to make that crispy, nice, delicious skin. But moving a chicken like this can be a little bit complicated. So if you have some grill tongs, and this is actually like a fish turner for the grill, if you have some huge implements, it really makes it a lot easier to get it in the pan. If not, you can use your hands. Just be really careful and make sure you're not actually getting them down there on that cast iron because it is hot. Now, once you get the skin to the color of your liking, you just want to go ahead and flip it over before moving it into the oven. Typically, I would leave it in the skillet and add some vegetables around the outside, but because I knew we had a lot of vegetables left, plus it wasn't just for us, I decided to go ahead and move it over to one of my baking stones because I can fit two of those side by side into the oven, allowing me more room for baking off the extra vegetables with the chicken. While all of those ingredients go to the oven, I am pulling out some of the frozen green beans that we put together a few weeks back over on my other channel. Now, they just came straight out of the freezer. Remember, I didn't do a thing to them before they went in. So this is just a bag of green beans. I'm sauteing them off in the chicken drippings that were left, plus some butter and some garlic, salt and pepper. And they turn out absolutely beautiful after they sweat down and really start to brown over on the stove. Now, at this point in the day, we are moving toward crunch time. My kids are starting to tell me that they are getting hungry. The kitchen smells absolutely amazing. And it's time to go ahead and get those potatoes put together. So after they completed their process, now it's time to just get them drained and anything added to the potatoes that you want to add. Now the specific recipe came out and said to add sour cream and a little cheese, but my crew just likes a plain old mashed potato, but they like them super, super smooth. A little bit more on a thinner side, I would say, than people most traditionally like. I grew up with them a little bit more rustic, a little less watery, but this is the way my crew absolutely loves them. So the first things first, I'm gonna go ahead and drain out the water that's in here to make sure that I have as dry of a potato as I can. Now, I did not end up getting out enough moisture, in my opinion, but nonetheless, they came together really, really beautifully. After a quick chop, we just add the ingredients of our choice, which today I had some heavy cream left along with some butter, salt, and pepper, and that was it. I just gave these a nice chop and was ready to go. I will say in the future, I'll make more potatoes than this. It was definitely enough for this night, and we've had them left over 2 days since, but I think if I was doing a larger meal, I would need more potatoes. So just throwing that out there. The recipe actually suggested a full 5-pound bag, but I did end up splitting that between the other applications for potatoes. Now, as you can see, even though I totally screwed my bread up on multiple occasions, it still turned out beautiful. And my son went ahead and whipped up some honey butter to go with it itself. So this was a special treat. Everybody really did enjoy it. And I went ahead and cut it into thirds. So it was easier for my kids to go ahead and pick up and use. Sometimes the crust on the outside of a sourdough loaf can make it a little difficult for little ones to use, but this turned out absolutely beautifully. And they have been asking for it again already. So I do feel that this will be one we put into the rotation, specifically because it's so easy to even make the same day that you're going to be eating it. Now, this is about the end of everything that we have prepared, but we have a few more things to accomplish before we can go ahead and sit down at the table and eat this delicious meal. One, the meats need to set at least 10 minutes before we can chop them up so that they don't lose all of their juices. We also finalized the table settings, brought in the extra chairs, and called my mother-in-law and her sister to come up a little bit early because we were actually done an hour ahead of time, which is hard to believe with all of the things that we packed into this day. Now, after the kiddos had full plates and all of the fixings, the cake was the last thing to come out. And somehow in the hubbub of all the company and things we had going on, I didn't manage to get you a big, beautiful picture of the cake. But let me assure you, it was an absolute treat. So there you have it, 8 hours and a little less than 20 minutes. I hope you've had fun. I know we have, and I hope to see you back really soon. And don't forget to check the link in the description for the Mop Robo. You won't regret it.